Everyone. I think we're going to get started. My name is David Colby. I'm president of the South Lake Chamber of Commerce, and I want to thank you all for joining us this morning. I'm very excited about this morning's webinar, Utilizing an Attorney to Plan and Simplify Your Life. We have all attendees on silent mode right now, and we will ask you to submit questions using the chat feature. I believe in difficult times like these, we all need leadership, sunshine, and some hope. Our speaker has been providing those things for our community for many years. She participates in the Chamber of Commerce at the highest level as a trustee and a board member. We're very fortunate to have Merideth Nagel of Merideth Nagel, PA, and Concierge Title as our speaker today. The law firm opened its doors in 2005 with one focus: change the world one client at a time. True to its mission, Merideth has dedicated her time to helping her clients face whatever life throws at them and assembling a staff of lawyers and employees dedicated to making a difference. As Margaret Mead famously said, never doubt a small group of committed people can change the world. Ladies and gentlemen, Merideth Nagel.
Good morning. I tell you what, I have always wanted to hear that. Ladies and gentlemen, Merideth Nagel. That's pretty exciting, David. So good morning. I like it. It's wonderful to hear you say, David, that I've been bringing positivity. Generally, I try to be very positive, and I'm trying to be very positive during this COVID time. I'm really excited about how the Chamber is adapting and changing to meet everyone's goals and needs, and trying to keep you guys informed. And I'm super excited that they've invited me to be even just a small part of this. So our title today is Utilizing an Attorney to Plan and Simplify Your Life. So I got to be honest about one thing. They chose the title. I try to simplify people's lives, but I'm not really sure that simplify is the word to use when it comes to lawyers. But I think the idea is what can I do or any other lawyer do to help you guys succeed. And so that's what I'm going to try to do today, is talk about what lawyers can do for you. Now, I need to say a couple things. We have a ton of great attorneys in our community. Of course, I think I'm pretty special, but there are lots of great professionals that I have tremendous respect and admiration for. So the information I'm giving you is not just about me. It's about any good attorney, which all of you should have as part of your toolkit in life. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about. How can an attorney help you in your life and in your business? You know, they famously said you should have a good doctor, a good mechanic, and a good lawyer. So let's talk about what people like me can do to make things easier for you. Now, y'all are going to be patient with me technologically. You should, if I'm doing what I am supposed to be doing, you should now be seeing my PowerPoint screen. Can y'all give me a shake of your head? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Now, just for testing for my purposes, I'm now going to try to, now you should be seeing me again. Can you shake your head? Okay, good, good. My marketing guru is on the call right now, and I'm sure she's laughing her keister off at me trying to figure out how to do this. So you guys be patient and kind, okay? All right, wait. Okay, here we go. Now, I'm hoping that we can make this interactive, because this is going to be boring if you just sit here and listen to me talk. So Amanda, am I going to be watching the chat, or are you going to be watching the chat? How do we want to handle that?
I can go ahead and watch the chat, and then I'll ask any of the questions to you.
Okay, and you'll interrupt me as needed, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, because I love to, like most lawyers, I love to hear myself talk, and I don't want to just be droning on and boring you to tears. Okay, can you see my slideshow? Yes. Okay, here we go. Maybe. Wait. Okay. I've kind of divided this up into the 4 phases of most of our lives, right? We have when we begin our career, marriage, divorce, children, buying our first property, starting a business, dissolving a business, financial planning for your business, your life, kind of estate planning, retirement, and then of course the very, very end. And a good lawyer can help you through all of these phases. I've had many clients that have been with me my entirety of my career. And I hope that each of you can establish that kind of a trust and love relationship with an attorney professional in your life. So let's start with this. A lot of people don't realize that attorneys are able to help you figure out what retirement plans are best for you, how to interpret employment contracts when you start your career, and finding other professionals. One of the things that I really feel like that a good lawyer adds value for you guys is you have a one-stop person that you can go to for recommendations on other types of professionals. So all lawyers in the scope of what we do encounter CPAs, financial planners, HR folks, insurance folks. We do that in our day-to-day business. And one of the great benefits of that by dealing with such a variety of people is we learn over time who's good, who's not, who's quick, who's responsive. And I know that my clients find a great value to be able to call me and say, hey, I need a CPA. Who would you recommend? Hey, I'm looking for some insurance benefits for my clients. Who would you recommend? And the fact that I can speak into that, or any good attorney can speak into the client's life and give recommendations based on real world experience, is super helpful. Now, I want to say this at the outset. Most people don't like to talk to attorneys because we're expensive. I get that. But when you establish the kind of relationship that I'd like to see all of you have with an attorney professional, it's not going to cost you money to call them and say, hey, I'm thinking about changing CPAs. Who have you worked with before? Or, hey, can you help me understand how the IRA and the 403 work together? Because I'm talking to my financial professional and I feel like that person is like speaking over my head. Can you be my interpreter? Calls like that, a good attorney feels all the time for our clients, and there's no charge for that kind of thing. So it's I guess what I'm trying to say is it's cheaper than you might think. So do inquire, at least if you identify an attorney that you like and you think you make a connection with, say, hey, I'm looking to establish a long-term connection, somebody that I can go to for all of my pieces of business. And what does that relationship look like on a day-to-day basis? And I know for me, and for many attorney professionals like me, the relationship that I'm talking about, this day-to-day basis, these kind of calls and inquiries and touch points are routine and don't cost money. So take advantage of us as you can. All right, I love this statistic, marriage and divorce. Right, so this is a big milestone in everyone's life. That you start your career, now it's time to think about getting married. So here's what I want to tell you. This is not going to be new information to any of you guys who've been married and divorced before, but you can see in this graph that as that the rough divorce rate stays about the same as we are getting married less in society. We're also getting divorced less, but it's generally half. If you stop and think about that, that's a pretty damn big number, you guys. Half the people that come and see me and are madly in love and think they don't need a prenuptial agreement, half of those people are going to be wrong and they're going to be sorry. So one thing that we do in our office that I'm proud of, and I think a lot of other good attorneys will tell you they do, is we can help people work on a prenuptial agreement or a postnuptial agreement in a way that keeps it from coming, in a way that keeps the relationship from coming apart. And what do I mean when I say that? When you're talking to, you've established your career, you've got some money, you've got some property, now you're going to get married and you're thinking, how do I talk through this prenuptial agreement? How do I make my spouse feel comfortable or future spouse feel comfortable? I think we're particularly good at doing this in our office. I'm keeping in mind that the people who are getting married and are in love with each other and they think they'll never break up. And I'm smiling and hoping and praying for the best for them. But I want to help them put these prenuptial agreements and postnuptial agreements in place without doing damage to the relationship. So that's a key that a really good counselor of law can do for you, is help smooth those waters out. And then when it comes time to divorce, when you've established a good relationship with a longtime attorney, if that attorney doesn't handle divorce, they're going to know the divorce lawyer that's right for you. So not everybody wants a bulldog divorce attorney. Not everybody wants a scorched earth divorce. Working with an attorney, again, that long-term relationship, that attorney's going to understand you, understand your assets, understand your issues, and help you figure out whether a traditional or collaborative divorce is right for you. Collaborative divorce is a really cool thing, and if anybody's interested in it, call me after. It's a way that the professionals get together and they start out, instead of being adversarial from the day one, the tone is, we're not going to be adversarial. We're going to come out of this relationship still friends, still parenting our children in as loving a way as possible, and having the right lawyers talk you through and work you through that process can make all the difference in the rest of your life after divorce. Starting a family. Okay, so this is super exciting for me, and I'm going to have you look at me for a change for a while, just for some variety here. So we do a ton of adoption in our office, which I'm very, very proud of. We do pro bono adoptions when we need them. We do step-parent adoptions. This comes up a lot, and having somebody that you can trust to walk you through that process is important. The other things that a good lawyer can do to help you simplify your life are helping you understand powers of attorney. What does it mean to appoint someone to handle your business for you when you can't, if you're sick or if you're absent? How about looking at short-term and long-term insurance and care? Planning for those things we can help with. A good attorney can help you understand what the right college savings plan is for your children. So a lot of people understand, have heard of a 529 plan, for example, but they don't really know whether they're talking about a prepaid college, which is different than an investment account that can be used for any college. So again, a good lawyer establishing, again, that lifetime connection, that good lawyer will be able to talk you through all of those life events, keeping things as simple as possible. And honestly, I do a ton of work just mediating between professionals. So sometimes I find that financial planners and CPAs especially are kind of talking up here, and my clients are kind of down here, and I can kind of help bridge the gap and make all of that understandable and simple. I'm going to stop now to see if anybody has any questions about anything we've just talked about. We've talked about the prenup agreement. We've talked about employment agreements, adoption, powers of attorney. Any questions so far? No? Okay, great. Let's look at the screen again for a little bit. I'm going to get really good at this as soon as it's over, right? That's the way it works. Okay, moving on. Can you guys see my screen? Okay, so this is my biggest pet peeve as an attorney. Well, that's hyperbole. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. Yes.
We do have a question before you go on to the next subject. Can you talk a little bit about postnuptial agreements and maybe an example of what that looks like?
Right. Okay, so a prenuptial agreement is an agreement that you enter into before you get married that discusses how your assets are going to be divided, what's going to happen with alimony, who's going to have special equity in certain properties. That happens before you get married. So you set the expectations at the time of marriage. A postnuptial agreement is the same kind of agreement, only it's entered into after marriage. In the postnuptial agreement, you could do the same thing you do in a prenuptial agreement. You lay out between you guys who's going to get what assets in the event of divorce, in the event of death. That's something that a lot of people forget about, that prenuptial and postnuptial agreements can be super helpful with. So I frequently have second and third marriages where there is a mixed family. So one of the partners will have children from one marriage and then maybe even a second relationship, and now they're going to have a third set of kids. And it's natural for anyone to be worried about, if they pass away, that their children from a prior relationship will inherit some part of their estate or be taken care of. And that's another thing that we can address in a prenuptial or a postnuptial agreement. So those agreements can touch on anything having to do with the division of assets, liabilities for alimony, homestead, all of those things, both in the event of divorce, separation, or death. Did that kind of answer your question?
And then there's two more follow-up questions, and they kind of go hand in hand with this. Does a prenup have to be filed in court, and are pre-post nups recorded? How are they conserved?
Oh, great question. No, they are not filed in the public records, thank goodness, because we don't want everybody knowing our personal business. In terms of how they're preserved, so most attorneys like me have safety deposit boxes where the originals of these documents are kept. I happen to have a bank vault in my building, which is super cool. So that's where I keep all of my original documents. And if we're having a hurricane, everybody needs to come to my office and jump in my bank vault because it's about the safest place you can be. So then what happens, of course, is everyone, the two people in the marriage that are involved get a copy. And the lawyer typically keeps the original only because we generally have a way to keep it safer. And then in the event of death, in the event of breakup, then this copy is protected. What I tell all my clients when it comes to anything having to do with estate planning, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, anything having to do with how do I keep my will, where do I keep this stuff, I would consider a postnuptial or prenuptial agreement that touches on what happens after death to be part of your estate package. And I would recommend that you keep a copy of all those kind of important documents in one place in your house. Let whoever's going to come behind you, the personal representative or executor that you've chosen, usually it's one of your children, let them know where you keep copies of these documents so that in the event of your death, they can get a copy. And then of course that will lead them to the attorney that has the original. Any other questions? One
more question. Are prenups witnessed or notarized?
Right. So the issue of witnesses and notaries goes to the validity and enforceability of the document. So any agreement having to deal with death, in other words, when I die, I want to make sure that the parties agree that a child from a prior marriage is going to get a certain amount of money, as an example. Anything having to do with death has to be witnessed and notarized with the same formalities as a will. Just as a matter of practice, I will always use 2 witnesses and a notary. A document can be enforceable without, a prenuptial agreement can be enforceable without a notary, but it's always the best idea to have the witnesses and a notary, just so that there's never any question about who signed the document and that it is a valid and true copy. Any other questions? I'm a firm believer, I do want to say before we get off this topic, I'm a firm believer in pre and post nups, and I know that it's very difficult for people to talk about in a relationship because it feels greedy, it feels, you know, I don't love you, I'm just worried about the money. The way I always tell my clients to message it is the truth. We're planning for a worst case scenario that we hope will never happen. And if we know what that worst case scenario is going to be, and we know the relative position of each of the parties, it kind of just frees you up and it can take away that looming sense of what happens if we get a divorce. So we try to keep, you know, our goal in our firm with these agreements is to keep the relationship moving forward. A lot of attorneys, not our good attorneys that are chamber members, but a lot of attorneys, some of you will have the experience that they like to stir up problems, in my opinion, just so they can solve those problems and look like they have a value add. Shake your head if you've had that experience before. You feel like an attorney's done nothing but just raise problems in order for them to solve them, right? So here again, this is why if you have that counselor-law relationship we're talking about, there's my son coming in to do high school homework. Hey, dude. I'm doing a live Zoom cast. Can you say hi to everybody and then take off?
Yeah.
Welcome to homeschooling. I was never meant to be a homeschool teacher, I tell you that, or a teacher of any kind. I know. Okay, so what were we? Oh, so it helps set expectation and keeps everybody on track. And we try to, if you have that attorney counselor at law relationship long term, your lawyer's going to know your personality and kind of be able to help you be a positive force in your relationship. And anecdotally, just recently, I did this with a very high earning client, man, married a not so high earning female. There was a concern, and we were able to handle it in a way that they both wrote to me after the fact and said that the relationship was only stronger after they went through the prenuptial process with us. Any other questions? Okay, so back to my one of my number one pet peeves is using an attorney to buy a piece of when you buy your property. So we've talked about looking at this slideshow and this presentation as going through the milestones of life. And I think for all of us, one of the biggest milestones is the first time we buy a piece of property, but it continues to be a huge milestone no matter how many times we've purchased. Now, what's interesting to me is that the more times a person has bought and sold property, the more likely they are to engage an attorney from the very beginning of the process. And the reason that's true, so Summit Realtor, Connie and MJ, y'all can shake your head at that. The more sophisticated your buyers and sellers are, the more likely they are to say, I need to get my attorney involved in this process. And the reason that's true is they've done it enough times to understand the value of an attorney. So typically when we represent a buyer, we're talking about $750 for us to go through the contract and advise our clients, the issues at hand, help them navigate inspections, surveys, understand their loan. Are they getting what they bargained for? Explaining terms to them that seem very foreign. All of that kind of representation we can typically do for $750 or less. And the kind of problems that we have been able to head off are huge. So let me give you some examples of some things we've done. We represented a buyer who was going to buy a piece of property. The realtors in the transaction actually said, you don't need a lawyer. This is a simple simple sale. It's in a townhome community. What could be the issues? And of course, as a lawyer, I'm saying you need to have a survey. And again, the realtors are like, well, why do we need a survey? It's a townhome. This isn't a big deal. Let's use the prior survey. So of course, my client thankfully listened to me. We got the survey, and you know what we found out? There was an easement running right down the middle of their townhome. It was an easement that was, that when the townhome was built, it was built in the wrong place. It had never been caught before because all the purchasers were cash purchasers. So they had listened to bad advice that a survey wasn't required. And so sure enough, when a survey was performed, there was a huge easement running right down the middle of her townhome in the yacht club. And we were able to get the issue resolved, but she would have been in bad shape if she had gone to resell to someone who was going to get a loan and insisted on a survey and found out that there was an easement down the middle of the property. So that's just an example, just one example of the kind of things that we find and fix. And again, for not very much money, especially when you compare it to the value of what you're purchasing. You're spending $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 on a house. It's really, you need an attorney to help you, whether it's me or someone else. Again, this is not all about me. We've got other great attorneys in our area and that are chamber members. Is anybody having a question about using an attorney in a real estate transaction before we move on? Some people that are from up north are surprised that we don't use attorneys in real estate transactions in Florida. Most of the north and a lot of the west has to go through attorneys as part of the process. Florida, unfortunately, uses title companies almost exclusively, and then people are lulled into the idea that attorneys aren't necessary. I do want to remind everybody that title insurance companies are just like other insurance companies, which is they're in the business of selling you insurance. And because they don't represent any party in the transaction, they might not be looking out for your interest in the transaction.
Meredith, we do have a question.
Sure.
Do you handle the closing or signing?
Right. So for that $750 fee that I just talked to you about, yes, we handle the closing ourselves. So you don't have to go to the title company. You come with us, and the benefit of closing and signing your documents with us is we're there to answer any questions about those documents as it goes along. So a lot of folks are going to pay a $400, $500, $600 closing fee anyway to their title company, and then when they're signing the documents at our office, they don't have to pay that fee. So we find that frequently we can save the client more money than we're costing them just by requiring the title company to reduce junk fees and closing in our office instead of the title company office. Any other questions about that or anything to do with buying or selling a piece of property with an attorney? Okay, let's talk about our business services. So it is it's just alarming to me the number of people that start up a business by going onto Sunbiz and filling in the forms and opening up their LLC, naming who they think is going to be their manager, and they use the wrong initials all the time, which causes us big problems when we go to do work for the company. And then they're like, okay, I'm done. I've set up my company. I love it that there is so much legal information out there for people on Google, the ability to go onto Sunbiz yourself and fill out forms. I really love that as a concept, but it ends up causing people a lot of problems because, you know, before the availability of going on the internet and doing it yourself, you basically had to consult with a professional. And in doing that, we help you figure out things like what type of business to establish. Should I have an LLC? Is that the right choice for me? People assume that it is, and frequently it's not. And then once that happens, do I have the correct operating agreements? Do I have employee handbooks? Do I have the right employment agreements? Am I using the right kind of CPA or financial planner for my business? A lot of people don't understand that many CPAs specialize in certain business lines. And there are certain types of businesses. I'll just name one as an example, a trucking company, for example. They really need a CPA who is experienced in dealing with other trucking companies because they have issues that are unique to them. And that's true whether you're a realtor, whether, you know, whatever kind of professional you are, we can recommend, a good attorney can recommend to you CPAs that specialize in that. We can also direct you to financial planners that are cost effective for you and for your needs as you're developing your business plan. Put you in touch with the right SBA lenders, people that we know can get an SBA loan done at the cheapest price, in the quickest way. So that's kind of what we do at the starting the business phase. And then of course at the ending the business phase, a business is not over simply because you walk away. A lot of people think, well, I just won't renew my business on Sunbiz and then that means I'm closed. That's actually not true. Dissolving a company requires the involvement of a lawyer if you want to do it in a way that protects you from future liability. Any questions about that? Business planning, how a lawyer can help with any of that? Okay. Financial planning, this is what we talked about: retirement plans, property investments, 1031 exchanges, the avoidance of capital gains tax. A good lawyer can help you navigate those minefields. Again, this is where people can get in trouble. You go on Google and you think you know the answer. Well, most people on this call, I'm sure, have their own profession and can testify personally to all the misinformation that's out there on the internet about what they do, right? Can I get some shaking heads so I know that you're listening? I mean, it's really terrible. People don't realize that just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's right. And I actually have a little cup in my office that a client gave me for Christmas, and it says, your Google search does not trump my law degree. And sometimes I have to take it out and put it on the front of my desk as a joke during a consultation. So again, you know, going on and reading about what a 1031 exchange looks like and how do you do it, that's a good base point to get some general information. But it's in my experience, the level of info that anybody needs on any of these subjects is not going to be found on the internet in a way that you can understand it. Most of the internet information out there is put out there to get sale pitches, as in a sale pitch kind of context. Like a lawyer will have a blog. I do this. You know, you have a certain amount of information, but it's trying to lead the future client to call and get more information. So they're a good starting point, but please, 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 for the love of Christmas, do not be making any legal or business decisions based on, or financial planning decisions based on what you see on TV or Susie Orman or on your Google search, because it's not the way to go.
Meredith, we do
All
have
right,
a couple questions.
Yes.
So do you also cover selling a business or a merger?
Yes, we do. Okay, this is a perfect example of how any lawyer can help you. You know, when you go to sell a business, your concern is and should be, how much money am I going to make? That's totally appropriate, and you should be relying on professionals to help you with other questions, not that are maybe we think just as maybe more important, like what will be my liability for this company after I sell it? Who's going to pay unpaid sales tax that wasn't collected? Who's going to pay when that client from a year and a half ago sues the company for something that happened while you were in charge, but yet you don't have insurance anymore to cover that? So all of those kind of legal issues that arise in the context of business mergers and business sales, we handle. And then, of course, we handle the closing, make sure all the proper documents are signed and all of that.
And the other question is, does your firm handle 1031 exchange?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about what's happening in the 1031 exchange market. Because it's a reflection of the fact that people are making money, selling their property and making money, and trying to figure out how to pay the least tax possible. So I will tell you, and I will tell the IRS, I consider it my moral obligation to help people legally avoid as much tax as possible. That puts a smile on my face. I'm unashamed to say that. You notice I said legally. I'm not going to get you in trouble, but I am going to help you keep as much money in your pocket as possible. So of course, when the market was in the tank, nobody was doing 1031 exchanges because nobody was making any money. It's back on the radar, and I'm excited about that. So the quick answer to the question is yes, I am what has been called a qualified intermediary under the IRS regulations. I can and do serve as a 1031 exchange agent all the time. But here's a cool little wrinkle. Neither a CPA nor an attorney can act as a 1031 exchange agent for their own client. So I'll do what's called a 10-second question in our household. What do you think the answer to think in your mind is? Why would the IRS not let me be a 1031 exchange agent for my own clients? Well, the answer is both CPAs that are actual true CPAs and attorneys can never be compelled to testify against their own client. So for example, if my own client was mucking around with the 1031 dates and requirements, I could never be compelled by the IRS or anybody to confess that information. So I serve as a 1031 agent for other attorneys who shoot their folks my way for that purpose, and for other people that just need a 1031 exchange agent. But no attorney can do it for their own clients, but a good attorney will send you to the right agent who will give you the proper service for a good price. Any more questions? All right, so let's talk about estate planning. I will confess to you all that I actually had no estate planning of my own in place until I was 40 years old. I've been a lawyer since I was 25. So I get it that this is something that nobody wants to do, nobody wants to pay for. And I think the biggest problem, honestly, is it can be hard to sit down and think about the reality of what happens when I die. Who is it that's going to take care of my assets? Who's going to get what? It can be a very difficult conversation to have with your children. It can be a very difficult conversation to have with your spouse if you have children from prior marriages. At our firm, what we try to do is as follows, and this is what any good kind of life, again, attorney for life can do for you. If your attorney doesn't do this as part of their practice or anything that you need help with, one of their greatest benefits is going to be to refer you to people who do this kind of work. And it is a part of my practice. And what we do is we try to build an estate plan that will last you your whole life. But once you work with my office to get your estate plan in place, you get to meet with me for free every year. And we sit down and talk about what has changed in your life, what has changed in the law, how that might impact your estate planning. Maybe it's time to start talking about a trust for you. Maybe you need to do some advanced asset or tax planning. So again, kind of keep it simple, have that meeting once a year, or sometimes people only call me every couple years. Get it done, then it's done. Have a meeting once a year to kind of catch up and make sure there's no changes, and then it's simple and it's taken care of. Very organized. We are particularly good at my office at trying to find the best solution for the best clients. Obviously, at Wealth Points, those solutions are different with different costs. So we serve folks from, just basic income levels all the way up to some of the highest earners in our community we do estate planning for. Does anybody have any general questions about any estate planning issues? Powers of attorney, living wills. I do want to make a general comment. Looks like Amanda has some questions. Before I take the questions, I do want to make the general comment about LegalZoom. So I often get the question, what about LegalZoom? Now, what do you think I'm going to say when you ask me about LegalZoom? Oh yeah, just go do all your stuff on LegalZoom. It's not important to have your own lawyer. Of course, I'm not going to say that. I do believe it's important to have your own lawyer, but I don't just believe that because I don't want you to go use LegalZoom and keep money out of my pocket. It's because LegalZoom is not going to be there to know your history, to know your future, to know your community, to understand the particulars in your situation. And LegalZoom is it's not much less than what we charge for basic services, except with us, you get, a real live body looking at you across the Zoom camera or across the desk. That's, again, someone you have a relationship with that you can go back to year after year. It's definitely, to save $300 over something so important just seems kind of ridiculous to me, frankly. Okay, go ahead. Amanda, do you have any questions about any of that?
Yeah, the one question we have is, what is an idea of the cost to get your estate planning in place?
Okay, that's an excellent question. A basic estate plan, which would give you a will, would give you power of attorney, which is super important. We can talk about those if y'all have questions. It would give you a living will, again, super important. Healthcare surrogate, that's going to be around $900 per person for all of those documents. A basic trust is going to cost you about an additional $800. That's what we're looking at for kind of the simple stuff. I feel like that's a great price point. We're certainly not the cheapest and we're not the most expensive. Any other questions about any of that stuff? Nobody wants to do it, guys, but you need to do it. It'll make things simpler. It'll keep you organized. I'll give you a cool little tip. Most people run across with their doctor or their hospital documents that they have to sign in connection with providing services, like a do not resuscitate, a living will. Those are documents that are generated by the healthcare provider. And again, you're just signing and filling in blanks, usually without any idea of what you're actually doing. Those documents are typically designed to be convenient for the medical provider, and not necessarily your best looking out for your best interests.
Another question.
Well, can y'all give me a moment to parent? Jackson Lee Bloater, you need to get out. You're distracting all these people with your noise.
I lost my page of my homework. It's due in like 30 minutes.
He's lost a page of his math homework that's due in 30 minutes. Can I get an okay that it's all right to hear him rustling through his papers? Yes. Is anybody else dealing? Okay, listen to me. I just have to get totally off topic. If all of this does not make people appreciate teachers, I don't know what will. I am like ready to give every teacher needs a 4 times raise because this is nonsense. Sorry, that's my preaching. I mean, I just, imagine me, I've got this 16-year-old, and y'all know what it's like to have a 16-year-old, he'll be 16 in June. And then I've got a 3rd grader. I'm just tired thinking about my life. Okay, any other questions about any of these issues?
The other question is, what is a healthcare surrogate?
Okay, awesome question. Let me preach to you guys a little bit. I'm gonna stop sharing so you can see my face. This is my preaching face. Can y'all see my preaching face? Okay, listen to me very carefully. If you haven't had this experience, you're going to, or statistically you're going to. When people die, parents die, spouses die, siblings die, the other people in the relationships lose their mind. People that got along fantastically, people that loved everyone in their family, they were the closest knit people you could imagine. Mom dies, dad dies, mom's needing to pull the plug, dad needs emergency surgery. The whole family system can literally fall apart. It is heartbreaking. And some of you have experienced this in your life, where you've seen just shocked by how people act and the things that happen and get said and done. One of the best things you can do is help head that off for people that you love, to help head off those fights and arguments. And by doing that, one of the ways you can head those fights and arguments off is by getting these documents in place. So for a healthcare surrogate, for as an example, most people will choose their spouse to be their first healthcare surrogate. That is the person who makes decisions for them when they're unable to make those medical decisions for themselves. And then they'll choose the second person, who's usually one of their children, and then a third alternate, a fourth alternate. So when it comes time to decide whether dad needs emergency surgery and have his leg removed, for example, there's not going to be bickering and fighting and the doctor trying to figure out who to listen to, because this document is in place and the doctor knows whose instructions they have to follow. Unfortunately, when presented with conflicting demanders, the fallback of the medical provider is usually going to be to do nothing, because they don't have anyone that's clearly in the driver's seat, and they don't want to get sued. So for example, many of y'all remember the Terry Schiavo situation. That was the one where the woman was in a terrible accident, and there was a question about whether she was still alive or not. Do you remember that? Whether she was brain dead or not. And then her mother and her husband ended up getting into a years-long struggle with what I heard to be hundreds of thousands of dollars of attorney's fees, fighting about whether, in fact, this woman, they could pull the plug on poor Terry Schiavo and stop the feeding that was keeping her alive. At the end of the day, she passed away, and we did learn that she was, in fact, brain dead. The husband was right. But that whole thing could have been avoided if she had had a healthcare surrogate named and a living will. You know, nobody thinks that this stuff is going to happen to them. And having these kind of documents in place is just kind of like having insurance. You hope it won't be needed, but if you do, you really need it. If stuff goes south, you really need this stuff in place. And again, just taking the time to get it down, do it once, meet with me or your other attorney once every year or every other year, and it's done and it's organized and it's simple. Any other questions about those documents? No? All right. Let me see, I'm going to share. Now I'm done preaching. I'm going to try to share again. Can you see my PowerPoint again? Yes, good. Man, I'm doing good. I hope Crystal is watching and impressed by me. Crystal's my techie person. Well, maybe she's going to be impressed. Okay, let's, oh, wait a minute. I'm trying to backspace back. Let's see. Okay, retirement. So as you enter retirement, this is another time that you can use an attorney to help simplify and organize things for you. There's lots of issues that arise at retirement time. Namely, what am I going to be able to afford to live on? How am I sitting with my investments? What we do and what a good attorney will do, again, is point you to professionals that can help answer those questions and also serve as an interpreter. Again, I find 9 times out of 10, even my most sophisticated customers and clients are having a hard time really understanding how all the pieces fit together. So they'll be able to talk to a financial planner about the money side, but then they may need to talk to me about kind of guardianship and other end-of-life issues. So working together keeps things simple, and having your attorney help you and understand what your retirement issues are is a super important part of our counselor at law title. Long-term care insurance is a big issue for a lot of people, and I sit down and help folks understand, given their relative assets, given their overall estate planning goals, whether that's a good idea or not. You know, I love and trust many of our insurance professionals in our community, but some of them are more interested in selling you insurance than actually doing what's best for you. We have some great people, and those are the people that I recommend, but we also have some people, not just in our community, but in every community, right? They're just more interested in the sale than you particularly. And an attorney can help you then take that sales information you've been given, and then work with you to make sure that, given all of the other facets of your life, the value of your business, what you plan to do with that when you when you retire or pass away, your ultimate estate planning goals, the attorney can help you get through all of that. Guardianship is also a really big and upcoming issue. It is meant to be that the powers of attorney that people sign will work to check you into an Alzheimer's unit or a dementia lockdown if you're ever in need of that kind of care or other kind of skilled nursing care. It's meant to be that the powers of attorney work for that purpose. Unfortunately, we're finding more and more that facilities are requiring that a guardianship be entered, and that is that a judge enter an order naming the person who can make the decisions for this person suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia. Many of you have heard about some of the abuses in the guardianship system. Those are a very, very tiny, tiny fraction of all the great guardianship work that's done by our professional guardians in the state. But working with your attorney ahead of time before you need a guardian will help you name the person that you want to be your guardian, so that you can be sure that it's a family member who's taking care of you and not some kind of a random professional who may not have your best interest in mind. So as you're approaching retirement and getting old enough to be really concerned about it, that's something that we would talk to you about, and making sure that all that's in place, as well as updating your powers of attorney. As you get older, you're more likely to need the help of your friends and family in making your business decisions. So retirement age is a good time to sit down with your attorney again, figure out, what do I need to have in place at this stage of my life? You know, we've tried to do this presentation as stages of your life. What do I need at this stage of my life? How can I make things simple? How can I be organized? And a good attorney can help you through that process. And again, help you understand what it is what you have and how it works. And then of course, we're all gonna die. Death and taxes, they say, are the only things that you can count on. And when you've established a relationship with an attorney or their firm, and now unfortunately you're gone, and the people that are come behind you are needing to handle your affairs, working with an attorney who knew you, who is familiar with your estate plan, is a big value. We can help them walk through what your plan was, help them execute your plan in the way that you wanted it done, making sure you're buried the way you wanted to be or cremated, and then just kind of all of your last wishes are fulfilled. A large part of our practice is helping people who come behind our clients, the child who is the survivor, for example, helping them navigate mom and dad's estate. How do I find out what bank accounts they had? How do I find out who they owed money to? How do I make sure that my siblings are getting the money that mom and dad wanted them to? Again, when you've established this kind of long-term relationship that I'm talking about, you can see the value that your attorney then adds to help your family get through that kind of difficult time. It's a fact of life. Nobody likes to think about it, but if you've done what you are supposed to ahead of time, if you've been well planned, if you've been well organized, it's going to make all the difference for the people that come behind. Really avoiding a lot of litigation and a lot of bad feelings, a lot of heartache and heartbreak. So we can help you even after you're gone by helping the people that you love. All right, looks like my timing is nearly perfect, Amanda. I am going to go back to me to see if you guys have any questions. I love to answer questions. So now you've got a free lawyer for 10 minutes.
There are some questions.
You got some questions. Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
One is, to be clear, a guardianship can be established prior to passing.
Absolutely. That's what it is for. You don't have a guardianship after you die because you're dead. The guardianship is while you're alive. And the key is, while you don't need a guardian, while you're in your complete right mind, so to speak, choose who it is that you want. Don't leave it to the court to decide, and certainly don't leave it in a situation where your kids are fighting. There's a document we do that's very simple and it is admitted into evidence in court if you ever need a guardian, and it says this is who Amanda chose while she was thinking clearly, so that there's no fighting and litigation. A contested litigation, I just was involved in one, and it was over $25,000 contested guardianship. And it could have been avoided by a document that cost about $150 to put in place.
The next question is, what is the difference between power of attorney and guardianship?
Okay, awesome questions. I've got some smart people on this call. Either that or you guys have been fed good questions by Crystal or something. Okay, so here's how it's supposed to work. A power of attorney can be drafted with all levels of control given to the agent, right? So let me just use names to help you. My husband is Leon, I'm Merideth. I have a power of attorney that says that Leon can make all decisions for me. So he's my agent under our power of attorney. He can make all decisions for me if I cannot make decisions. Now, some people would say, well, why do we need a power of attorney when he's your husband? Well, he can't talk to the IRS just because he's my husband. He can't talk to my insurance company just because he's my husband. He can't talk to my lawyer just because he's my husband. And if something were to happen to me right now, like let's say I go and get in a horrible car wreck and I'm in the hospital, y'all can imagine the level of things that have to happen in my life just to keep my business going, keep our family going. And without that power of attorney, Leon would struggle. And for some of the people that he would have to deal with, he would actually have to go and have himself established as my guardian, even if only temporarily. This is mainly because, of course, everybody's so afraid of being sued by giving out the wrong, financial information to the wrong person, et cetera, et cetera. So a power of attorney as drafted can be like mine to give sweeping every power to my husband. So, he could go and take out every nickel of money I have in every bank, for an example. Or a power of attorney can be very specific. So if you just want someone to sign documents for you at a closing because you're going to be on a vacation, that's a very specific power of attorney. So the broadest powers of attorney that we draft also say that the person, your agent, again in my scenario, Leon, could check me into an Alzheimer's unit if I'm losing it and I need to be on lockdown, for example. That's what it's intended. The problem is if he's trying to check me into lockdown and I'm screaming and objecting and saying, no, I don't mean to go. I don't want to come here. This is not where I want to go. I want to go somewhere else. Frequently, providers can be concerned and that they're going to be faced with litigation. And so you know what they say? They say, yeah, Leon, we'll let you check her in, but let's go to the courthouse first and have you admitted as her guardian, because then you're acting under court order. And that way, if I follow your instructions, I'm not in trouble. So the power of attorney is intended to prevent the need for a guardianship. And we always try to rely on the power of attorney to the extent we can without the expense and hassle of a guardianship. But unfortunately, it sometimes falls apart for the reason I just gave. Also, people go on LegalZoom and try to do their own power of attorney, and it's not right. Somebody got a form off the internet and it's not sufficient, that kind of thing. So that's how they kind of work hand in hand. Did I answer that question well, guys? Shake your head if you were listening. Yes, no, okay.
The next question is, when do we know it is time to put a property into a trust?
Oh, I love this question. Okay. So if you ask a lawyer, let's restate it. If you ask a law student, should I own property in a trust? A law student is going to say a trust is a great idea for everybody. A trust keeps things private when you pass away. It allows people to move much more quickly. It avoids the probate process. It can serve as a privacy tool. If you don't want people to know who is buying property, for example, you can call it a trust that nobody should track down. So a trust is like eminently awesome. Again, law school answer, everybody on this call should have a trust because of everything it does. But then reality comes in, right? The reality is it costs money to put into place. You have to sign documents as the trustee, which some people find to be annoying. So when I'm asked the question, when is the time to put property in the trust? I always kind of give this answer, right? If money is not an object, now. Unfortunately for all of us, money is an object. So when I help people figure out whether it's time to spend the money now, we talk about the things that we've talked about earlier in this call. What are your concerns when you pass away? Do you have a child that you think may have a drug or alcohol problem? Do you have children that you want to protect from a prior relationship? You know, how important is privacy to you at this point in your life? Those kind of things. And that's really made on a case-by-case basis. But again, if there's no money not being an option, everybody should have a trust. But a good lawyer is going to sit down and help you figure out whether it's good for you at this stage of your life.
The next question is, if you bought a property in your maiden name prior to marriage, do you need to change your name on the deed to your married name later on, or does that even matter?
No, good question. No, you don't. So if you bought a property in your married name and then you go to sell it and you're married, in your maiden name, and then you go to sell it on your deed, you will simply be referred to Merideth Nagel, formerly known as Merideth Langley, as an example. So the deed into you has one name, and when you deed out, you just do a formerly known as, and that's sufficient as a matter of law because the marriage license that you entered into is a matter of public record. So now everybody knows who you're married to and can track you legally back to that maiden name. Any other questions?
The next question is about the probate process.
Yes.
It just says, Mary, if you could add to it, it says, how is related to probate process? So I'm not sure if it's how is that related to probate process, or we'll wait and see if Mary wants to.
Somebody have a more specific question?
Okay, if you have a trust, does it go through the trust? How is that related to the probate process?
Right, so the trust is one of the best ways to avoid probate. That's one of the number one things that people use the trust for, and it's one of its best uses is to avoid probate. And the reason you want to do that is, number one, the cost. Probate typically costs around 3% of the total value of your estate. So if you die owning $600,000 worth of stuff, your attorney's fee bill is going to be about $18,000, the attorney's fee bill to your representatives. If you set the trust up, that fee is not going to be there because the probate process won't be needed. A trust works kind of like a corporation. Like when you're passed away, then your successor trustee just takes over your business and doesn't need to involve the court or a lawyer, except to the extent they might need a lawyer's advice on what to do. But it's not like probate where you have to go to court and you have to use a lawyer.
We'll do our last question here. If you do a new will, does it supersede any previous will, and does it override life insurance beneficiaries if stated?
Right. Okay. So life insurance is governed by the terms of the life insurance agreement, and the life insurance is going to have a beneficiary. We always recommend that people do not put their estate as a beneficiary, because then the life insurance comes into the probate, which it doesn't have to do. We don't want to do that. If you're able, if your estate plan is simple and you just want to leave your insurance to your 2 kids equally, then just put those kids on as a beneficiary. It does not need to go through probate and shouldn't go through probate. Sometimes people have a lot of money and a lot of life insurance, a large policy, and they have kind of a complicated scheme of who they want to get what percentages, and it's more sophisticated than what I just told you. That would be a situation where we would address it in a trust, or we could do it in the will. But again, once you put something into, and you say like the estate of as the beneficiary, then you're putting it into probate. If you say the trust of, then again, you're avoiding probate, and it'll just be governed by the terms of the trust.
Very good. Well, thank you, Meredith. We really appreciate it. It's been super informative. We have recorded this, so it will be on Facebook later today. We will tag you, Meredith, if you would like to share it as well. We'll also be sharing this on our website and in our newsletter. So a lot of really great information. And as always, we appreciate everything that you do, Meredith.
For sure. And I'm going to tell you guys, everyone listening, the same thing I say on Facebook. Please call me if you have any questions or problems about anything that's happening in your life right now, COVID issues, SBA loan issues, unemployment issues, all of that stuff. I'm helping people, and I'm doing it for free just because I want to do what I can to help. So let me give you everybody my cell phone number. It's 352-217-7009, 352-217-7009. People are calling me weekends, evenings. I am doing everything I can to help. Just trying to help our community. So do not hesitate to call me. I mean that absolutely. Those of you that know me well on this call, you know I mean it when I say it. Call me. I'd rather help you now than us have some big expensive problem later, and I'll talk to you for free. Even if you just want to call me and say, hey, pray for me because I'm completely freaked out. I've got a lot of those calls too. So please take advantage of me. I want to help as many people as I can.
Okay, Meredith, one last question. The slide deck that you shared, is that something that we should share when we post this?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great, thank you so much.
Have it. Bye, you guys.
Bye-bye.
Blessings. Kill it today. Kill it,
Have a
kill
great
it, kill it.
weekend.
Bye.
Bye-bye.